Hi, my name is Shelby McCubbin and I'm a student in Dr. Cooper's lab. Today we're going to be looking at photosensitivity in invertebrates, the eyes of a crustacean. In this lab, we're using this stainless steel that has a coating on it, and this way we can cover the exposed wire with glue and place the crayfish in water to have a more natural stimulation environment. To expose the tip of the metal, we're going to burn a little bit of the tip of the insulation back. So in this lab, we're using 3 different wires. One is going to be for the ground, one will go in the eye, and one will be at the base of the eye stalk. In order to hold the crayfish in place, we're going to use the burrito technique, where we have the crayfish wrapped up so that it is not able to pinch you. Okay. So the ground wire is going to be placed in the body cavity. So what we're going to do is make a small hole under the cuticle. The easiest way to do this is to use a scalpel. It's possible that some hemolymph may come out, in which case we're just going to dab it up with a paper towel. It's beneficial to label the ground wire ahead of time so that you don't get your wires confused. We placed a little bit of wax on ours in order to distinguish. We're now placing the ground wire. Once the ground wire is in place, we're going to use some gel super glue. We have found it's good to use Gorilla Glue, but other super glue may work. And this Gorilla Glue is beneficial because it's going to cover the exposed silver wire. Once we've applied the glue, it'll take about 5 minutes to dry. After placing the ground wire, we move on to the eye stalk wire because normally the prep will move a lot more with the eye wire. We place this bit of wax in order to keep the eye still, and this also helps to expose the eye stalk at the back. What you can do is use a pin and look through a dissecting microscope in order to make a small hole at the base of the eye stalk. Gluing the second wire may result in the eye being glued in place, but this will make it easier to place the last wire. It's helpful to use a wooden dowel rather than using tweezers because the tweezers may end up getting stuck with the super glue. If one doesn't want to utilize the whole animal when doing this procedure, previous research has shown that you can cut the eye stalk off and use the isolated eye stalk. So we're now poking a hole in the eye towards the side of the prep. This is going to allow us to place the third wire, but we want to make sure it's shallow. It should go just beneath the eye. You're going to again place your super glue, but you don't want to cover the whole eye. Again, use our wooden dowel in order to make sure that the super glue insulates the wire. And then we're again just going to let the glue dry. With these preps, we can compare the responses of the crayfish to the crabs in order to see if they have different photosensitivities. The crayfish can be looked at both in and out of the water. Now that our prep is set up, we're going to dark adapt the animal just like we did with the caudal photoreceptor previously. We again want to set it up in a way where we'll then be able to stimulate with light.
Darth Vader.
We can set up the stimulator to pulse the light. And looking at the screen, we can see on the top red recording that we have a response every time the light pulses. After dark adapting, we're able to test our lights. you can see the response when the light is shined on the crayfish. So we're then able to use our blue light. And you can see with the blue light and the stimulator, we're having great consistency. And it lines up with the red pulses above. One can use the dissecting microscope again, using different filters over the light. You can cover and release for short bursts of light. So this same procedure can be done in both crabs and lobsters. With crabs, sometimes the eye recesses, just like that, and this makes it easier to glue in place. In this case, you'll put your ground wire back in the thorax. Or you can even place the ground wire in the back between the thorax and the abdomen because it'll still have access to the body cavity. But you'll be very careful of their claws.
Flashing. And
One thing students will note is that the longer you dark adapt the crayfish, the more sensitive the response is going to be. In order to change the variable and look at different wavelengths of light, students can either use a white light and put different filters on it to get different wavelengths, or LED lights come in different wavelengths. And so this will allow students to compare the responses in a crayfish prep to the crayfish caudal photoreceptor, or even the crab eye or a lobster eye. One thing that's really nice about these preparations is that in this one where we're looking at the crayfish eye, we could then later use the prep for the caudal photoreceptor prep or a different experiment altogether. After students stimulate the crayfish, what you can do is remove the tape and the paper, and this allows you to place the crayfish in water. You're going to make sure to move the wires out of the way so that the crayfish can't bother them. One may either glue the wires further back on the crayfish or even consider using a plastic tube that can then be glued on the back to keep the wires out of the way.